What is going on YouTube? This is Ask the Root. So I'm going to review the first EP by Nine Inch Nails. Basically, this project is called Broken and it came out in the fall of 1992. Now, it's been quite a while since I've reviewed Nine Inch Nails. I reviewed Pretty Hate Machine from the late 80s back in 2017. I reviewed some other of their stuff, like a couple of songs from like some soundtracks and stuff like that. But it's been over approximately 6 years since I really covered their music, and I wanted to get back into it. I eventually want to review the Downward Spiral, but this is like a precursor to that I didn't know about. Basically, I would say that this is like a good 1-2 punch to have with the Downward Spiral. It's about the same variation as that particular type vibes. That was just kind of in a more heavier type sound. I do actually own the Downward Spiral, so I'm going to have to get to that soon enough. But it's just something that's in the pipeline as far as that kind of goes. But this is a pretty stellar project. This is definitely a pretty tour de force as far as that kind of goes. Definitely appreciated this one. I don't remember what I thought of Pretty Hate Machine, but I think I did at least like the singles on there. There were just some good stuff. There was just some good stuff on there, I would have to say. But yeah, I would have to say like Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails is basically like the precursor to Marilyn Manson. They helped spawn Marilyn Manson in the early mid 90s and stuff. That was kind of the concept where both Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson dominated like the mid to late 90s for a while. And really, Nine Inch Nails did not drop a lot of albums in the 90s. This is one of three. So the other two, the Downward Spiral came out in 1994, and then there was an album that came out in 1999, but they really didn't do that much. It was basically kind of like how Dr. Dre took a large time off because of the Chronic success and how much he revolutionized things at that time. This is kind of a similar, same approach where it just felt like a lot of Nine Inch Nails albums were pretty revolutionary. Like a lot of these, like when I look up things like allmusic.com and when I look up places like Rolling Stone and allmusic.com and some of those, like most of these albums tend to get like a 4.5 to a 5 star out of 5. So these are definitely some excellent ones, and my review is going to be no exception. This is going to get a pretty rave and classic score. It's just that awesome of a project just to kind of sit there and say it's just kind of strange that this album is kind of bewilderingly was just that flat, and it's just kind of the concept of it. But it is, it's an excellent project. This definitely does a lot of things right. It's brief, it has a couple of instrumentals on here, and most of these songs on here I wound up enjoying quite a bit. So it's just the concept. Had 3 singles off of here, and that's pretty good for an EP. It's kind of in the same par with like Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies, and that type of stuff. It's the same kind of concept. This is definitely a pretty stellar. I wanted to review this for a little bit, but I just have finally gotten around to it. So this is a good concept as far as that kind of goes. Just a very overall quality project here. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles. There's 3 singles on here, and I don't know the order as to which these came out, so I'm just going to review them in terms of the order I thought it was. The first single was Wish, and one of the singles off this album is Wish, and this is a fierce rave highlight with manic energy. It reminds me of Closer from the Downward Spiral, and it's just got nice get crunk type vibes about it. So this is definitely one. I feel like the execution, this overall eloquence about this song reminds me a lot of Closer from the Downward Spiral. Same type of variation as far as how that kind of meshes out and does that sort of thing. I would have to say this is just really great for a rave. This has some pretty manic energy. Just really kind of reminds me a lot of the stuff off the Downward Spiral as far as that kind of goes. It's definitely like Trent Reznor really had some manic type fare on here. It just worked extremely well to kind of get some of these. Like I feel like Happiness and Slavery is probably a lot crazier than Wish, but these are both good 1-2 punches to kind of have as far as these kind of go. It's really great stuff for dance floors as far as that kind of goes, and rave type stuff. This really works in that sort of sense because, you know, folks around this time like Nirvana wasn't really doing dance club songs, and like it didn't seem like No Doubt kind of was. Just folks like that, Green Day, some of those type folks, they just were a lot more relaxed as far as that kind of went. So these are just some pretty electric kind of songs to kind of get. And Wish is just a really fierce one. This was pretty popular on Spotify. Wish was pretty popular on Spotify, so this is just a good bop. I would say Happiness and Slavery is another single off this project. Might have been the second single, but it's definitely one off here. It's just a crazed kind of extreme night out for boiling rave energy, I would say, and it reminds me a lot of Marilyn Manson. So this is the same kind of craziness that Marilyn Manson had in like the early mid 90s and stuff off of Antichrist Superstar and some of those type moments. I definitely would have to say that Happiness and Slavery is just like a really kind of, this is the most manic and just overall demonic song on here. Just really works for like a real kind of pitch of night, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning type rave session as far as that kind of goes. Just some good dance efforts as far as those kind of happen. It's just really got that manic type feel about it. Just overall, like the riffs on here, just overall has some great stuff as far as like the craziness about it. And, you know, Trent Reznor really knows how to get crazy. It doesn't feel like he's not as much of a spook as folks like Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson are, but he definitely knows how to get pretty crazy on some of these as far as it kind of goes. Just good stuff. this kind I mean, both these singles are just like more raw and kind of more rough draft versions of the stuff that was kind of on the Downward Spiral. So it's definitely, if you want that kind of rugged energy, but not quite the sheer kind of commercial, if Downward Spiral's kind of gotten played out, these are definitely some more raw and kind of rough draft kind of versions of that to kind of kick back with and just have a real manic time, because these are real kind of dance floor ready and just overall demonic kind of ones. And then Physical is another single off of here. This is a nice, steadfast evening haze metal gem, I would say. It has kinetic, boiling vibes, and it's just an overall good Kickstarter. I definitely like the chugging beat on this particular one. The chugging guitar riff on here just really works as like some good instrumentation. Just an overall nice one. The second verse gets a little bit more manic later, but I definitely feel like this is another kind of crazy one. Not quite as crazy as Happiness and Slavery or Wish, but I'd say it's just an overall. This is probably the one that I would think would be the closest to like Makeshift. I wouldn't say it's like 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock p.m. Makeshift as much as it's more kind of 5:30, 6:30, getting ready to step out a little bit type Makeshift as far as I was kind of concerned. Maybe it's just the winding down moments of being at your job, something like that at work, those type bobs. Just getting ready to go home, get ready to step out and get crunk type stuff as far as stepping out a little bit and having some fun. It's just kind of the concept of just those moments, just kind of in transition towards having a better time as far as that kind of goes. But I definitely, there's not a ton of Makeshift songs on here. This is a pretty like recreational project, and I do like that concept. But it's just kind of interesting because I was almost expecting, just because I don't know a ton about Nine Inch Nails, I thought they were going to kind of have the Tool approach of just doing songs like Sober and Prison Sex and some of those type ones that just happen to be like day Makeshift as far as that kind of goes. But I like the concept of just getting these manic type songs. That's some good stuff. And talk about the rest of the songs on this album. So there's 7 songs on this album. There's 2 instrumentals on here. There's 8 songs on this album. There's 2 instrumentals on here. One is just really just like kind of like some really not even much of an instrumental. I don't really even feel like Pinion is much of an instrumental, but Help Me I Am in Hell is a nice instrumental. So I'm just going to count it as 7 songs. The only one I'm not going to count is Pinion. So out of those 7 songs that are left over, the only song I didn't really like is Gave Up, which, to talk about that one, this really felt like the kind of jittery vibes and just overall kind of clumsy beat of Gave Up just really kind of lagged it down, and just was like the only true song on here that didn't have some sheer kind of full-blown execution. So yeah, this EP is going to get a 10 out of 10. Gave Up's the only real song I didn't vibe with, but I would have to say, talk about these other songs on here, like Help Me I Am in Hell is kind of a murky evening malaise of a song. Definitely, I really like this one. It's a good dusky tune, and it gives solid excitement to pop off later. This is another one that kind of works in conjunction with like Physical, as far as that. This is another one that kind of works in conjunction with Physical. Just kind of some good stuff that's kind of Makeshift in like a little bit of a sense. 5:30, 6:30 p.m. that type of stuff as far as getting ready to step out. But this has a real kind of murky. It just really has like a murky kind of evening malaise type feel about it. Just perfect for twilight and sunsetting type hours as far as that kind of goes. It's a nice one. Last is some murky day after hours blaze. I would say it's an easy outdoor fun highlight, I would definitely have to say. And it's a steadfast social jam, I would definitely talk about. And it just is a smoking song. So this is one that's kind of like the stuff that Disturbed and folks like that kind of do. That's just kind of more outdoor hangout session, just barbecues and that type of stuff. Just really some murky kind of, I mean, it can almost be an autumn song. It's kind of summer blaze, but just the murkiness and overall haziness of it kind of leads me to believe that it's just between like July and October or something like that. Just those kind of smoke type sessions where the skies are kind of orange and it's just a little bit hazy out. That type of stuff just really works as like some outdoor kind of festival type vibes. It's got some pretty manic energy. I feel like this one's kind of close to like Happiness and Slavery. It's not quite a rave song like that song, but I do feel like it's kind of got some manic energy just to kind of have, where it's just kind of some outdoor. It's got some manic kind of crazed energy, but it's just kind of in a more outdoor fest type hangout session where you could smoke and that type of stuff and just have music blasting, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. So that's a good one. It's kind of real murky, woozy kind of energy as far as that kind of goes. And then Suck is kind of a low-key, catchy hangout house party Kickstarter, I would definitely say. The chorus is pretty rave, and it's an easy night venue kind of bubbler, I would say. So this is kind of one that just kind of works in the sense of kind of being a good house party cut. It's just kind of got that low-key kind of bubbling kind of energy about it. Just really kind of easy kind of hangout music blaring, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. But it also works as like a decent kind of night venue type bubbler. I just would have to say it's just a little bit more low key. I definitely would think that the singles would probably catch more attention than this song, but it's just kind of another one to kind of fill out the rest of the playlist if you need some extra ones that are night venue energy, but just kind of have enough craziness to kind of keep people electric and alive as far as that kind of goes. So it's just a good one for that sort of concept. This whole album is basically ready to go, would have to say. And even Gave Up, this is the one song I didn't thoroughly enjoy. It's a decent kind of night venue song, but I just didn't like the instrumentation of that one. So that's just kind of the concept on here. But yeah, So this EP gets a 10 out of 10. Would definitely have to say the social score is going to get a 10 out of 10 because I definitely like the fact that there were 3 singles, a little bit of makeshift, like mild makeshift kind of vibes, but mostly kind of rave craziness and stepping out and just like a wicked kind of really going to get crazy kind of dance sense as far as that kind of goes. I really like the energy of this particular band. It reminds me I really need to get to reviewing like the Downward Spiral and that type of stuff. It's another kind of crazy one, just like this one. It's just some good stuff. These are some classic 90s albums here. I feel like Nine Inch Nails, despite the fact that they weren't here a ton in the 90s and kind of spaced out their album output, they did have some very vintage projects. So this is definitely good. Social score gets a 10. Regular album score gets a 10. Some overall good nightclub kind of moments and a decent taste of makeshift and some evening haze as far as that kind of goes. Just some good overall moments just for stepping out and just kind of loosening up a bit, having some drinks in your system, that type of stuff, getting some women to dance, some of those type moments as far as that kind of goes. So it's just some good concepts. And I would have to say, in terms of the future, like Nine Inch Nails has been gone. They obviously don't drop as much just because they've been here since the 80s. They've been here for quite some time now, but just being able to say they do have a number of albums that they have put out, and I'm going to get to some more of these, but this is definitely pretty stock and just overall classic, especially for an EP. This is a classic, this classic rock album ripped out of the 90s. This overall quality.